Julius, tell us a little more about some of the personalities at Los Alamos. Well, first, I know that you were very close with Enrico Fermi. Give us a feeling for what he was like as a person.
When I knew Enrico, he was in his early 40s. Unfortunately, he died at an early age from stomach cancer in his early 50s. As he was in his early 40s when he was at Los Alamos. He was one of the great minds of our century. He was quite unique in the physics area by being not only a great experimentalist, but also a great theoretician. And he had numerous papers, which are landmark papers in both areas. In general, you have theoretical people like Einstein or Bohr, etc., or you have experimental people. And he was good in both, and which made it very, very interesting. For the most part, we were his, I mentioned the people previously, that had been three of us, were his personal team for carrying out experiments that he was interested in, and or we were all interested in. But Enrico had the position at Los Alamos of being scientific director, not the director, but head of the science, both theoretical and experimental. He did have a theoretical group separate from ours, but when he wanted to do any experiments, we would discuss the experiments. We would either propose it or he would propose it. We jointly agree on what we would do, and we prepared the experiment, got everything ready, and carried out the experiment. Generally, he was in on the initial discussions. He was not with us when we were constructing the equipment or putting the thing together. When we were ready to take measurements, he would generally come down. He'd be there with his little slide rule, and it was very effective, because we'd be running an experiment and we'd be gathering data. He'd be looking at the data and calculating it, and he'd say, "Hey, wait a minute, something's wrong. Something must be out of place. The measurement isn't coming out right." Whereas normally, you'd run through the entire experiment, you'd analyze the data, you'd find out something was wrong, you'd think about it, you'd come back later. He was there right on top of it, and he was recognized by both the theoreticians and the experimentalists as being their superior. I think there was others that were almost as good, but I think Bohr was probably his superior in the theoretical area. He was not an experimentalist at all. Hans Bethe was a very good theoretical person. They had certain people who were good at experimental. Louis Alvarez was an experimental physicist. But in terms of Enrico, you asked his personality. For whatever reason, he preferred, in terms of not scientific discussions or scientific meetings, but in his social life, he preferred younger people than people I wouldn't say he was old, but at 40. But we would all go skiing over the weekends. Enrico would join us. We'd go hiking, and we'd have Enrico would be with our little group. Our little group was quite a tight little small group. Not that we isolated ourselves, but we did a lot of things together. And Enrico was part of it. And
was he lighthearted socially? Was he very serious? Was he fun to be with?
He was fun to be with. He was. He ran a very controlled life. Normally, he would go into his office at 9:30. He'd close the door, and he would work till the end of the day, till 4 or 5 o'clock, and he would come out, and then he would join us for dinner or what have you, and he was left the work behind in his office. But the work in his office, he would tell us that in his younger days, now he was 40, in his younger days, he could turn out a paper a day that was notable. He had that power of concentration. He did not want to be disturbed when he was working on his own. But when he closed the door, he didn't spend his evenings thinking physics. He'd obviously answer questions if you asked him a question, but he preferred to talk about events of the day, the world economics, etc. And he was he, in his younger days, clearly, he had a total recall of everything. He's when I knew him in his 40s, he had one little notebook that he wrote down certain equations or things that he wanted to be sure he had at his fingertips. But he said in his younger days he didn't need that. He knew everything. He could read. I was with him one day at the faculty club at Chicago, where there was a botanist, and got into a discussion about some plants, etc. And after about a half hour of the discussion, this professor body says, Professor Fermi, he says, I didn't know you studied botany. and Enrico didn't study, but I think he picked up a book one day and he read the book. And he could recite it. So he was a font of knowledge of all kinds. And, remember once we were out at the point here in Chicago swimming, and somebody just casually made the thing. They wondered to what extent the lake rose and fell in the tides. You can see Fermi thinking for a few seconds. Then he comes out with the number, so much. How do you know that? He says, well, he says, with the formula for inland tides for an inland lake is such and such. We say a big long equation. So when you have that kind of a mind, it makes for a very interesting person who is very erudite in lots and lots of things. And I think to some extent he liked to show off a little bit, like all of us do. But I found him a fun person. You liked him. You played tennis. When I first started back here out of law school, came here, we rejoined the little group we had Darragh, Herbert, and Enrico were all at the University of Chicago after the war. And we used to play doubles on the tennis courts at the faculty club. And we used to play every Saturday. And Enrico was one of the foursome, and he would show up, even though after the war he became very renowned in the country. He was on the General Advisory Committee in Washington, etc. He'd be in Washington saying he's got to go home. He has an appointment. The appointment being our tennis game. He was a lot of an interesting man, and I can't say I was an intimate of his closest people in intimacy were people that he knew, like Edward Teller, Hans Bethe, etc., some of his peers. But he liked to spend a lot of his leisure hours with younger people. I think he liked to think of himself like Socrates, having.
Tell me about what the other two members of the foursome were like.
Herb Anderson. Herb was a very close and dear friend, and he became head of the Nuclear Institute, chairman of the department for a period of time. In Chicago, they have a rotating system. Other places, the positions are more permanent, but at Chicago, you're made a chairman for someone, 3 years or something. I'm not sure exactly, and then it rotates around. He's one of the senior members building the synchrocyclotron at the University of Chicago after the war. He was a very interesting person and married a stewardess, airline stewardess, Jean Anderson, and they had a number of children. They lived in the near the university, one of the houses that where the faculty live, and he was a little more serious, I think, but he was certainly a wonderful friend and a very, very bright individual. Darragh became one of my closest friends. He presently is retired. He was at the University of Chicago, went back to Los Alamos, was assistant director of one of their big projects. He's now retired, lives in Santa Fe, and we correspond occasionally. And I was the best man at his wedding, and his wife is still living, I think, but last I heard she was in a nursing home, and we're all getting long in the tooth, and things change. But there is a very quiet, understated individual, but a very, very good friend.
You talked about Enrico Fermi working hard during the day and then clearing his head of work at night.
That's when he's at the university. That's what he did. And obviously at Los Alamos it was a little bit different because he was director of a large number of groups. He was technical director of the program. So he's more, I think, more administrative, more getting involved.
I'm interested in your thoughts about creativity, because one theory of creativity is that you think about a problem intensely and then you let it rest, and during that period ideas are germinating and then creative thoughts occur. Is there a pattern that you've noted in terms of some of the brilliant scientists that you've worked with, or do many have different patterns?
They may have had these patterns, but if they are, I wasn't privy to the pattern. I couldn't tell, that they have now germinated an idea. They're now thinking about the idea. They're now doing so and so. My visible recognition of what they were doing is when they came out with something, and
how about
brilliant, something nobody thought of before, something that was new and unusual. You can do it in various ways. I know that I have son Cliff, and he's a geneticist who runs a big laboratory. He gets great excitement when he's accomplished something and he has a result, and he realizes that he now knows something that's true in this world that nobody else knows. That it is something that has evolved. He recognizes the importance of it, the newness of it, and he's the only one that has that grasp of thing. It gives him great excitement. But now,
so you're talking about curiosity.
I don't know what I think each individual must react in their own ways to these various things. I think that a person like really brilliant people, Niels Bohr, certainly Fermi, Hans Bethe, various people do very creative work, and I don't know how these ideas originate with them, whether it's by concentration. Some of them, like Enrico, could do this in many fields. I'm sure that if he got into a discussion with you on orthopedics, he'd suddenly come up with some new ideas, new instrumentation, etc. How there are certain creative geniuses that have that ability.
But when you think about your own problem solving, when you're working on a problem, do you just keep working away until you come up with a solution, or do you work on it for a while and let it rest? What's your method?
I think both. I think if I have a problem, legal or otherwise, my mind thinks about it, and I can take like other things. Have you ever forgotten the name of somebody? And if you concentrate, you don't get it. But all of a sudden you relax and start thinking about other things, and suddenly it pops into your mind. I've seen solutions to problems occur that way. I've worked on them, and I've had a very difficult time getting a solution, etc. And finally, I lay it aside, and all of a sudden, in the middle of the night, I'll come up with a path in which to go. Other times, I won't. It's not a. Sometimes you have a problem, you work on it, and you try the various ideas, and one of them clicks. It's I think it's at least with myself, it's each way works, but not for every solution. But I think the creative mind comes up with much more ideas, is much more innovative. I mean, I don't put myself in the category of some of these peers that I've worked with. Some of them are, I find, very exceptional. There are exceptional people. They get born every once in a while, and you have to cherish them when you find them. And the interesting thing was that at Los Alamos, basically all of the creative people in physics in the U.S., certainly those that were in the atomic area, nuclear area, cosmic ray area, including mathematicians such as Johnny von Neumann, who invented did the pioneering work on computers, were all present at the same time, and it was very unique in the history of science. I don't think you can ever bring together that number of people of genius in one place, working on a common thing, and doing it in a camaraderie way, and not in a fighting for turf, etc.
You mentioned before that several of the people at Los Alamos were refugees, and and had a very powerful sense that it was important that
Oh, yeah.
we get this bomb first.
Sure, Wigner, Teller, Bethe, and we had the entire contingent from England came down there, Rudolf Pyrals. You had the best of the best were there.
And
And
was
I think we're very fortunate. Most of these individuals were good Germans. And most of them, a lot of them, like Bethe and several others, were Jews who had converted to Catholicism. And I think the reason they converted, they were secular Jews. They were, by birth they were Jews, but they were not raised in any religious fashion. And the laws of the country at the time in Germany, you had to be a German to be at the university. You had to be Catholic. Got no problem for them. They converted. They became Catholic. But then when Hitler came in, and he said, if one of your grandparents was Jewish, you're Jewish, regardless. And there was a large group that left Europe, came to the United States, and a lot of these people, before the war, the center of science was Germany. And the people who were the center of the atomic project were to a great extent European, and many of them of German Jewish extraction. Had Hitler not thrown them out, I'm not sure where the world would be today.
So was
fortunate.
Is your sense that there was enormous esprit de corps, that there wasn't the any sort of turf battles or ego issues, that everybody was pulling together and realized that this was a very significant project?
Yes and no. There were people who were Teller, for example, felt that he ought to be the head of theoretical physics, and Hans Bethe was put ahead of theoretical physics at the project program. It took Oppenheimer, and Bradbury and some others there to bring orderliness and sense to the whole program and make sure that each one worked in a cooperative way. I mean, I think that Oppenheimer did not contribute significantly to the technical aspects of the program. Well, I shouldn't say that, because I think he was very, very good in that he headed, if there was a meeting and there was a controversy to go this direction or this direction, he would be very influential in making the decision of which direction to go. But the different directions did not come from him. He was brilliant. He had an orderly mind. He was able to take the ideas and synthesize them, and make reasonably good, excellent decisions. He made good decisions as to who should be in charge of what, and was able to discuss that with the people he was a very, very good administrator. And I don't know anybody who could have done the job as well. Now, he had fortunately, I think Grove saw this because, pardon me, as you probably know, Oppie in his younger days spent time with various communist controlled groups. His brother was a member of the Communist Party. His wife had been a member of the Communist Party. Most of his friends were far leftish. And normally, when you're talking about a project like we're talking about, you wouldn't select such a person to be a person that you would make as a, not even as a head, but bring on board and provide him with the classified information necessary to run the project. But I think Groves recognized how important he was people-wise, and in handling people and running people and making and running meetings, etc., and brought him in spite of that. And as Oppie grew older, like most of us, he became more and more conservative. He was never directly tied to the Communist Party, though he was supported. He was quite wealthy and supported a lot of left-wing organizations in his younger days. But they were smart enough to recognize his value, and as history is proven, you go back, he, as far as one is able to tell, he was a very good, loyal citizen, and I think before the end of the war, he was a committed anti-communist. He recognized the political. He got involved in politics, and was on various political organizations for the government, and was making decisions for the government. And it was a pity he was pilloried the way he was, because he made a magnificent contribution to the United States and its security. But he, I think his failure was that he refused to give, to give up the names of all the people he knew and who were associated. It was, after the war, it was the McCarthy area. All you had to do is get a rumor of somebody being supporting a left-wing organization, and he was out of a job. There was a group that wanted nuclear energy to be under international control, make it not just something for the United States, but for the world to have it buried, so it's never used. And and Oppie thought that, Fermi thought that. Others did. I'm not sure I did at the time. Things changed when Russia got the bomb and was on the way to developing the thermonuclear. Obviously, you don't want somebody else to have it. The thing swung around, and support for the thermonuclear became something that the people like Oppie and others decided had to be developed in the United States. But you could go back to a period of time when people were arguing, is this a rational thing to do? Is this something good for the world? Etc. That doesn't make them subversive, obviously. Right. But that cycle took place, and I don't know. Now we're in a situation which isn't good. I don't like nobody likes the idea of terrorists who, if they get a hold of it, are the what will they do with it?
You are really in a unique position because you have worked with the leading scientists of your era, and you have two sons, one who is a leading scientist and the other is a leader in the field of medicine. Do you see parallels? Do you see differences? You've lived through many technological advances. Do you see advances in the way people approach problems? Do you think that we're evolving as far as human nature, or do you think people are very similar now to how they were before?
Well, I don't think people change, but technology changes. Technology changes not by the masses, but by a limited number of brilliant people. But things are advancing very fast. We've gone through the nuclear area. I mentioned the video area that occurred. There was the biotechnology revolution, where you're doing genetic things that were impossible previously. Now have the entire genetic code available at almost affordable prices now, and it's going to come down to the point where with a few $1,000s, they'll be able to read your entire genetic code, be able to see are you susceptible to certain diseases, et cetera, et cetera. It's going to change the entire field of medicine. There's a computer era has come. Things that are available now, you were just thinking about in those days. First, computers were developed. First one was developed at Los Alamos, because for doing some of the calculations for some of the weaponry, they needed mathematics, and they needed to do arithmetic very fast, and with an ordinary means, it would take them years to do. And they developed a computer to do them quickly. In those days, all we had was that Marchand calculator, some mechanical calculators, which gears and wheels that operated very slowly. I remember the first computer That was room several times the size of this room, filled with vacuum tubes, etc., to make simple calculations on a computer. Now, then, if you remember the first early hand computers to do arithmetic, just did addition, division, etc., cost $500 or something for a thing which you can buy for $5 today. The thing has moved extremely fast, and it's still evolving. You're now having nanotechnologies coming in, and it's going to revolutionize the way things are done. And I don't know what's going to come in the future. I think it's going to be. I assume it'll be as exciting as the last 100 years. But a lot is being done. But I can't. These revolutions are done by scientists, people with intelligence, knowledge, etc., which should be fostered. And we used to be, at the end of World War II, we were, for a number of years, we were the leading country in education, science, technology. Today, I don't know where we are, 23rd or something in the world. We're overtaking kids in Korea, in Japan, various places in Asia. Their education of youngsters coming out of high school are far superior to what we have in the United States. And I think that our educational system has to be strengthened, brought up to date. Money should be spent in that area. Forget about the military, etc. We're shortchanging ourselves in the long run. It's these young people today that's going to make the world tomorrow. And
are you optimistic that we have the political will to be able to do that?
I'm not sure. I hope we do. That's all I can say. Is certainly, if you look at where we spend the money, where our budget's gone, when you look at the Obama regime, which is supposed to be an enlightened, going to bring the bright future, he's not spending the effort and the money to change things at the fundamental level of education. We're not bringing through youngsters that will have the ability to change the world the way it should be. Not saying that there are none, but you go to any place, go to the Harvard Medical School today, you'll find that you're better than I am at giving the numbers, but I think at least half of them are Asian or European and not American. And Harvard medical is trying to bring the best people here. You take a look at the class, you see, you don't see an American class.
It's definitely changed.
When you look at your life experience, what are some of your personal sort of peak moments? What were some moments that that brought you the most satisfaction, the most joy?
Well, I think you'll find that anybody who's been at Los Alamos considers the years at Los Alamos, which is only, roughly a 2-3 year period, as being the best years of their life. Best years in the sense of being in a community of peers on a daily basis. I would be having, we had one big, the central part of the program only had maybe 150 top scientists. We all ate together at in one place. You were together for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And you were with your separate group, which was a joy to be with. It was you'll never get that again.
Were there women scientists in the group?
There were a few. There was Alan Graves. His wife was a scientist. There was another one, Joan Hinton. She was in a subgroup. I worked with her when the first job I had when I went to Los Alamos was we built a small urinal nitrate nuclear reactor, and she was part of the group. She was that was involved in building this reactor. Now, our group, which came in, our purpose was not to build a reactor, but to run experiments using that reactor to develop some basic knowledge that we needed. But the reactor wasn't completed, so we joined. It was Percy King was the head of that group building their reactor. We joined Percy King's group, Herbert and Darragh, Nagle, and myself, until that reactor was built. And she was a member of that group, Joan Hinton, a very, very brilliant young lady. She was actually an Olympic skier. And unfortunately, the war came along and they didn't have the Olympics then. But she was a very good outdoors person, skier, etc. And very good scientist. And after the war, she had a brother. Well, her mother started the Putnam School. Putney what?
Putney School.
Putney School. Up in Vermont and that area. She had a brother who was a communist and went over to China and with the Chinese communist group there, and she was induced to go over there, and she married a friend of her brother's who was also a communist in China, and has lived in China ever since. She died about a year ago. And for a long time she was on the subversive list because she had been on the program. But she, to my knowledge, when she went over to China, she changed fields completely. She spent her life over there on helping to run a communal farm, and in charge of modernizing and bringing modern equipment into China for farming. And we saw her maybe 15 years ago when she was already in her mid-60s or so. And I guess for the first time was allowed to come back to the United States for a visit. And she advised us she had never been badgered or never got involved in science outside of agriculture out there. But there were a few, but there were a lot of people and a lot of women who were assistants. We had the special SED, Special Engineering Detachment, a group of engineers that came that were used by the program for doing routine calculations, routine things. Los Alamos itself was an army base, so they had not only an engineering detachment, they had a detachment of wax. So the secretaries, etc., were waxed out there.
Tell me, aside from Los Alamos, what were some
Other
personal highs?
Personal highs were when at times of major discoveries being made by the clients, breakthroughs in technology, interesting things that occurred with my own children. Gave me great satisfaction that they won a tennis match or what have you. I don't know. Some things happen by that you don't predict. He's not here at the moment. One summer, Jeffrey wanted to come to San Diego because in San Diego they had the La Jolla tennis club, beach and tennis club, where all the young tournament tennis players, La Jolla, used to practice and train. They could do that all year round. So he asked me, is there some way I can get him a job at the Salk Institute so he can spend time in La Jolla and playing tennis there? So I brought him out to La Jolla. I asked one of the professors down at the Salk Institute, Roger Guillemon, would he mind having a gopher for the summer? And Roger always said, "Oh, that's great." He says, "I was planning to have my daughter here, and I was afraid everybody was going to say it was nepotism. So it's great to have your son here also." So Jeffrey spent the time in Roger Guillemon's lab for the summer, and somewhere along the summer, Roger wrote a paper, and he was very much interested in having his daughter included in the paper. He couldn't do it by itself. So he had Jeffrey and his daughter do some scut work on the program. I don't know what, he'll have to tell you what it was. But in writing the paper, he acknowledged the great help that he received from his daughter and Jeffrey Tabin in running this experiment. The following year, Roger Guillemon got the Nobel Prize. What did he get it for? The work that was reported in this paper. I get a personal high every time there is a gratifying achievement in the family, whether it was from Johanna, from Jeffrey, from Clifford. You know, Clifford has both won a number of prizes, as has Jeffrey. They all give me great satisfaction as they occur. And I think I've just led a charmed life in that sense. I mean, one doesn't expect it. When Jeffrey and Clifford were small, yeah, if you'd ask me what they're going to be or what they're going to do, I couldn't tell you. I just wanted them to live as I have done, a life full of joy, not just joy in being able to go to the Bears game, but every minute of their life. I want their work to be a joy. I want their leisure to be a joy. They should have. I wanted them to be in something that they really liked. Money was not the answer. It was like Bhutan, which has they want
Gross national happiness.
gross national happiness. I wanted them to be happy in whatever they did. They wanted to be a performer, a jazz guitarist. I didn't care, as long as they enjoyed what they did, enjoyed life to the fullest. And I've been very blessed, and that has occurred. I couldn't have predicted where they would have gone. I know Clifford, very early when he was young, wanted to emulate me in a way and go into physics and science. And I thought maybe he's going to go into physics or mathematics. He ended up as a geneticist, completely different field, but very successful. Jeffrey, I didn't know. I thought he was a climber. In his younger days, he was a climber, and a tennis player, an outdoors person. And I hadn't the slightest inkling he'd become a renowned ophthalmologist. And both have made their own way, but I think they found their niche. I think they're happy in what they do, which makes me happy. My wife was extremely successful. Nobody has mentioned her, but Johanna, God bless her soul, was a respected psychotherapist. When she started out, psychologists were not psychotherapists. They were clinical psychologists doing testing. And there wasn't even training for a psychotherapist in the United States. She had to go over to England and studied with Anna Freud to get her training, and became a respected member of her profession. But she enjoyed
including receiving a Lifetime Achievement Award
right,
from the American Psychological Association.
You know, but wonderful. She has a wonderful circle of friends. She was highly respected, but she enjoyed every minute of what she did. And I think that it's been a blessing to be in this environment. I just wish that everybody had an opportunity to do for the same. But at any rate, I'm happy with the consequences of my radiation.